Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. And the name of today's podcast is No More Pennies for Your Thoughts. And recently, I wrote an article about President Trump's order to stop making the penny. And a lot of people think it's a good idea because it costs a lot more to make a penny than it's actually worth. But my article was about if they take away the penny, then eventually the nickel and the dime, and there are more cashless transactions, and what would happen if we had a fully cashless society and how it might hurt women in the long run. And if the article gets published, I will let you know. But I read this to my friend, and after I read it, she said, "Wow, that sounds like someone who's really afraid of uncertainty. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to enjoy myself." And regardless of whether you think it's a good idea or not a good idea to stop making the penny, what was so fascinating about that moment is my friend felt that any talk of what could be in the future was worrying. And for her, being in the moment meant she wasn't going to worry about it until she had to. And I think this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be in the moment and what it means to be worrying about the future. And if you're someone who watches the news and you're up on what's going on in the world and you take action about those things, you take action about issues that you're not happy about, whether it's the environment, whether it's politics, whether it's something at work or your own community, that doesn't mean you're not in the moment. When we leave the moment is when we are in a situation within ourselves that we're stressed, we're filled with anxiety. We can't sleep at night because of our fear of the unknown, our fear of the future. But if you're in the moment and you're present and you're internally not in conflict and you're looking at something and you're like, wow, this is something I care about and I want to work now so it could be better in the future. It doesn't mean we should not enjoy the moment. It just means that there's something that as a community, as a collective, that we should be aware of and perhaps take a position on. Presence does not mean ignoring the moment. Presence means living the moment. And that's the purpose of this podcast, is to help people care about things and at the same time be present and not be overly stressed and worried about the future. And the first thing is presence really comes from a non-resistance of the moment. That is the first step. What is happening right now? So if you're having trouble at work, if your child's having a problem, if there's something you don't like in your community, you can say, I don't like this, or I would like to change this, but this is happening. And that is a moment where you don't rip yourself apart on the inside. And yes, we're going to have feelings about certain things, and we're going to have to process certain things. But whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're seeing is happening. And resistance to what is the first thing that takes us out of the present. And the second thing, like I just talked about, is you have to look at your feelings about it. You can't say, I've decided to be present, I'm going to deny how I'm feeling. This is how I'm feeling about this situation. I'm upset. I don't like it. And you got to give yourself a moment because that might lead you to something. Sometimes feelings lead to solutions. Sometimes feelings lead to understanding ourselves better. Being present doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. No, number 3 is thinking about what you can control and what you can't control. So if you hear something that's out there in the world and you have feelings about it and there is nothing you can do about it, it is beyond you, it is out of your control. Sometimes that's a moment where we let go and we become present. It might not be the easiest moment, but it's the moment that we're in. And I often find when I realize I don't have control of something, sometimes it leads me to go out for a walk. Sometimes it leads me to do something creative. Sometimes it leads me to do more community work or charity work. I realize that perhaps I can't change this piece of the world or this is what is happening, but how could I add value? Whatever that value might be. And it could just be my own joy, going out with friends, laughing, or it could be me giving something to somebody else. And going back to control, sometimes we do have control. Sometimes we can have impact. But that doesn't mean we should step out of the present. Then we get to ask ourselves, how can I participate in this change? What do I need to do? Like, for instance, if you got a bad job review, well, most of the time you might have control over changing your actions or thinking about another way to do things, or you had a fight with a friend and you believe that you should apologize. These are things that we can do, but we could still stay in present form, meaning that we're not going to worry about what this thing is going to look like in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but we still can make a plan in the moment. And that's what my friend was missing. You could still have a discussion, you can make a plan, but the real time you leave the moment is when you're stressed and you're fearful about what will be. You act in the present. You do the best you can in the present, and you realize that the future is unknown. Whether you can control the situation or not, we leave the moment for 2 reasons. One is we're thinking so much of the past that we can't be present today because we're filled with regret and we're trying to fix what we can no longer get to. Or we're worried about the future. What will this moment mean for tomorrow? And because we don't know, life is bad. So your relationship with uncertainty is another way that you could stay fully present. You realize you don't know what's going to happen next. You realize that there's an unlimited field of possibilities. You realize uncertainty is your best friend, and you create the future in the moment. So when you calm your mind down and you're not worried about what will be, you're very present focused, even if in that present you are trying to make a change. You realize you have no idea what's going to happen. You are doing your best in the moment to create the change you want to see. That is presence. Presence is not ignoring what's happening in the world. I mean, you could, it's a choice. Presence could be just feeling your breath, but presence could also mean you're somebody who's very engaged in the world, but you're present to it. Actions are present, even if it's a plan for the future. And I did bring up the past just now as well. Being present is not trying to undo what cannot be undone, trying to go into the past, trying to think of how you could have been different. That's not presence. And again, you have to work out your feelings about the past, but it is a solid wall that you cannot get behind. At some point, we have to make peace with yesterday in order to be present. And I always say this, everything that's ever happened to you in your life has brought you to this moment with the hope and possibility that you could still have the life that you want. So every breath is a beginning. Every breath is another opportunity to begin again. Here you are. And that's what creates a present-based life. You could still be a very deep, caring individual about everything that's going on in the world and still be present. And I understand sometimes there are things that are very hard to look at that go on in the world and things in our lives. But we are still here to have the experience to breathe, to ground, and face what is in front of us. And while this is all happening, there is also always something so glorious about the moment. And we should not forget that too. There's joy, there are new experiences, there's laughter, but we have to be home to have that experience. So how we choose to show up every day is our presence and the moment. And in that presence also, you will find you will have a more heart-based life. I know for me, if I'm thinking too much of the past and too much of the future, I'm not in my heart. And I know when I'm in my heart, I feel the most joy, the most love, and I experience my life in the deepest way. So I hope also that in your presence that you will drop down into your heart and allow that love to guide you every day. So that is a presence-based life. No resistance, feeling, seeing what you can control and you can't control, having a good relationship with uncertainty and trying to live from your heart. You don't need to ignore everything going on around the world to be present. You just need to remember that each breath is a new moment and we create the future in this moment. And for all we know, maybe the best is yet to come. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my books, The Gift of Maybe, A Year Without Men, Maybe Everything's Okay, A Parent's Guide to Less Stress and Worry. You can find them at all major bookstores and online retailers. If you'd like to buy my Maybe cards or my Maybe digital journal, they're available on Amazon and Etsy. And most of all, if you like this podcast, I hope you subscribe and leave a comment.